what do you think? How much resources, money, and skill it takes to hack some of the large, most recognizable companies they are out there? Any guess? It's hard to guess, hard to estimate, but the answer is yes, correct. From the back of the room, it's zero, because to fish out login credentials, all you need is to be a skillful person in social engineering. As an example, Uber in September 2022 experienced a data breach. When they analyzed the breach, it turned out that they've been hacked by an 18-year-old hacker who basically convinced one of the Uber employees to accept a push notification as a second factor. By doing so, he gained access to his account, was able to register a second device, and basically later on exfiltrate the data. Basically what he did, although he compromised standard user accounts, later on he found a local share of files where he found some PowerShell scripts which enabled him to elevate himself to admin privileges, and he got access to platforms like Sentinel-1, Slack, Google Workspace, and CircleCI. Later on that year, Rockstar Games also expected a similar data breach. Basically, somebody used push bombing to convince, and again, social engineering, to convince somebody to accept the push notification. By doing so, the person was able to obtain access to the Slack platform of Rockstar Games and steal about 90 videos of unpublished content of GTA 6. So that didn't affect any online streaming capabilities of Rockstar Games, but potentially caused huge harm, because they released a game that hasn't been previously released. They would have released many more videos, but Rockstar Games confirmed they had paid the person not to do that, which clearly shows the motivation was financial to breach the organization. Later on that year, Dropbox also confirmed they've been a victim of a large-scale phishing attack where somebody stole the login credentials. By doing so, they were able to steal the source code, they were able to steal some customer employee data. Later on that year, GitHub also confirmed that they have been a victim of a similar phishing attack. So basically somebody tried to steal login credentials for the delivery and integration platform called CircleCI, and by doing so, they exposed some customer data. So what do those data breaches have in common? Well, a few things. So first of all of them used the best possible MFA methods. All of them have been hacked. All of them have been hacked without using any sophisticated tools or any sophisticated knowledge. After those incidents, all of those 4 companies decided to invest in phishing-resistant authentication software. What that is, I'm going to tell in a minute. My name is Marcin Majchrzak. I represent Yubico, a company that has a mission to make the internet safer for all the users out there. So how does a typical cyber attack look like? So first of all, the first phase is recognition. The hackers can do that because we post a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of information available. So using that information, hackers can build a scene to make, the phishing emails very realistic, very corresponding to the reality. Then they build a scene and start the initial exploitation. After doing so, they take over the users' accounts. They can then exfiltrate the network. They move laterally, obviously just like in the Uber case. They will try to elevate themselves, to escalate themselves to administrative privileges. By doing so, they can disable MFA, they can create additional accounts, ghost accounts, etc. And finally, because that's the ultimate motivation of the hackers, they can exfiltrate information, steal source code, steal customer and employee data, and that's how typically it all starts. Well, but in order to break into the account, you have to steal the credentials. Credentials, typically username and password. Unfortunately, the more complex the password, the higher the risk that the password will get stolen and used, because most users admit that yes, they use strong, long, and complex password. However, they use the same strong, long, and complex password in multiple services. I'm not sure. Are any other users in here that do that? I see some people laughing. I'm sure everybody does. Yes, because most of us do it, unfortunately, because it's impossible to remember long, complex password and have them unique for every service. And as you know, phishing is the number cause of data breaches because, well, one thing to highlight, hackers, they do not break in, they log in. And in order to log in, they have to steal the login credentials. Why? The human factor is mainly to blame. 95% of successful cyber attacks are caused by human error. Human error by, in the report by IBM, is defined as lack of action or action by mistake. 90% of data breaches are a result of human error. Obviously, not every data breach, not every human error ends with a data breach, but most of them are a result of a human error. And 56% of decision makers confirm that phishing, apart from ransomware, is one of the biggest threats in the organization. Well, the internet's full of phishing scams, passwords, hijacked accounts, and billions of credentials traded on the dark web. There's 80% of web-based attacks are a result of poorly protected credentials. And if you do not use strong MFA, there's a 33% chance that your data, or at least your accounts, will be compromised someday. There's actually a website, I think almost everybody who's in IT security knows it. Very small link here. I'm going to share the slides afterwards. I'm sure Click will share them. Have I been pwned? Where you can put your email address and check if your data set has been involved in a data breach. If it has, and you're still using the same passwords for all the services, better change it quickly, because it might be, somebody might try to use it in other services. Phishing resistant MFA, by many different statistics, is the best protection out there. So as an example, how fake login website defeats legacy MFA. Legacy MFA, what that is, I'm going to tell you in a minute. So you have same kind of scheme. You have your victim. It could be Marcin. Marcin lands on a fake website, either via a link from an email address or via Google Ads. That website could be, I don't know, Office 365 or a website of a bank, which looks exactly the same, apart from slightly different website address, which, of course, at first point you're not able to realize. Marcin, thinking that he's on a real website, he's going to give his username and password to the attacker and not to the real bank. That username and password will then be used on the genuine bank's website. And what happens then? So even if the bank's website is protected by legacy MFA, i.e. by a text message, by TOTP, HOTP, by mobile push, because we have entered the real login credentials, this website will send the user a push notification, will send the user an SMS with a one-time password, will ask the user to enter his OTP, which again, then the victim will put, either he's going to click yes on the push authenticator app, he's going to give his second factor on the fake login website, which again gets intercepted by the attacker, used on a real website, and he can either do two things. So he can change the password, change the login credentials altogether, log the user out, or worse, just like in the case of Uber, just like in some other cases, he can add himself additional MFA methods and work under that account without the user knowing. By the way, this was a scheme that was used in a very loud attack on a Dutch chip manufacturer, NXP. They discovered this after 2 years. The Chinese hackers basically compromised the login credentials, added themselves, additional authentication methods, and were able to work within the NXP website for about 2 years, exfiltrating data. So this is a real life example. That's why we say, we looking at the data, we have 3 categories of authentication. The first one is username and passwords. It's deployed everywhere. It has no usability gaps because we talked about this. The password has to be complex. You have to remember it. It's very unpopular because, I mean, how many of you have a password policy in your company that you have to change the password every 30, 60 days? It's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 characters. It's becoming unmanageable and it's expensive and difficult to manage. And it's a very popular phishing target. So the second category is password-based MFA, 2FA, legacy MFA, however you want to call it. It's all the authentication methods based on a mobile app, an OTP token, SMS, phone, email. We say it's legacy MFA because it's all based on old protocols, not specifically designed for security. So you have the same secret on the server, same secret on the user side. If the server gets compromised, the whole authentication process gets compromised. User experience is far from ideal. So let's say use SMS. You know, many of you had the situation, yes, send me an SMS. It doesn't come after 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. Send the SMS again. It comes, but that's the first SMS. So it doesn't work anymore. You wait for the second one, etc., etc. Same with a push notification. If you don't have internet access, then it's not going to come through. So it's not always ideal, and as we saw in some of the examples, they are a popular target for phishing. So we have the third category, phishing-resistant MFA or passwordless logon without the password, and the only two protocols that have been defined as phishing-resistant, I'm sure the colleague from Thales agrees, is either FIDO-2. FIDO-2 is a protocol for online authentication. I'm going to go into the detail because I think we had a very good explanation from Thales on this one. Second one is smart cards. Again, everybody who listens knows exactly what I'm talking about. So those two, security-wise, are quite similar. So they're based on a private key, public key. Public key sits on the server. Private key sits on the YubiKey, never leaves the hardware security key. So even if you land on a phishing website and try to use your hardware security key, the authentication will not work because the website address doesn't match, the certificate doesn't match, there's no trust between the public key and the private key, so you're not basically going to get through. That's why we say it's highly phishing resistant, and because the private key never leaves the hardware security key, it cannot be phished out and then used on a real website. So the success rate of an attack when you use username and password is about 80%. Legacy MFA, it's between 10 and 50%. 50% chance, I mean, the weakest authenticator is always the SMS. I mean, due to SIM swaps, etc., similar attacks. 10% is the authenticator app with number matching, but again, it's still not phishing resistant. So by using either FIDO-2 or smart card, there's no technical possibility to take over this account. So looking at the statistics, if we combine the first and second together versus the third one, why do you think we have an 80 to 10% success rate versus 0% success rates? What's the main factor? The users, the human factor. Exactly, because in the first two authentication method, we still rely on the weakest link in the authentication protocol, so we rely on the human factor. So the user has to realize, I am on a phishing website, it's not a real website, I should not be given my login credentials, I should not be given my second factor, I should not be clicking on yes in the Authenticator app because it's not a real website. In case of the third one, the authentication protocol checks this for the user. So the user could be the, dumbest user out there, but the authentication will still not work. He will not get his account compromised. And this is a fundamental difference we are talking about here. Phishing resistant, I know we talked about this quite a lot. What is it exactly? And NIST has actually got a definition for this. So phishing resistant, according to NIST, is the ability of the authentication protocol to detect and prevent the disclosure of authentication secrets and valid authentication outputs to an imposter-relying party without reliance on the vigilance of the subscriber. So in order to achieve phishing resistance, you have to take the user out of the authentication equation. And this is as simple as that. CISA sees this similar. So again, the two authentication protocols that have been deemed as phishing resistant, either FIDO-2 or PKI, i.e. a smart card. Those are resistant to push bombing, SIM swap attacks, etc., etc. Apologies, this is a bit of a small slide, so you just have to believe me in what it says there. But I'm going to share the slides later on. Microsoft sees this quite similar, by the way. I mean, they divided the authentication methods into legacy. So as you can see, you have the SMS, you have the password. It's not considered as a strong MFA method. In the middle section, you have the passwordless authentication methods. The Microsoft Authenticator is considered as passwordless authentication method. But again, it's not longer considered as phishing resistant. So the only protocols considered phishing resistant are FIDO-2 on the security keys, logging in with a certificate, which by the way can also be supported by a security key, or using biometrics, in this case Windows Hello for Business, but as you know, it cannot be used everywhere. It has got its limitations. So just a quick example how modern MFA with FIDO stop phishing. So we have the same schema. Our victim lands on the phishing website, gives his login credentials to the attacker in this case. The attacker uses the login credentials on the fake bank's website. And in this case, the bank's website is secured by a FIDO-2 token. The attacker gets asked by a pop-up in his browser to enter his security key in his workstation, and at this point, the authentication process stopped, because quite simply, he does not have his security key. He cannot divert this request, so he's not able to log in and conduct a remote attack on this website. Well, you know, as we know, so Microsoft sees this in a similar way. So the target is achieving phishing resistance. The target is to log in without the password. Obviously, you know, there are some challenges along the way, because not every website, not every service supports FIDO-2, supports a smart card. So it's a process. You cannot achieve that from one day to another, but I think it's important to build a strategy how you move from phishable authentication methods based on a password or legacy OTP to phishing resistant authentication methods based on a smart card FIDO-2, FIDO E2F, and many companies do it in a different way, but for corporate use, we always recommend to use essential identity providers such as, you know, Azure, such as Thales STA, such as Okta, Duo, Ping, Micro Focus, etc. Try to put all the apps behind the central identity provider to make sure you can log in passwordless to those apps. The FIDO security key supports multiple protocols as well, so it can support, you know, the phishing resistant protocols for the services that are ready. You can store FIDO credentials on the hardware security key. You can store up to 12 smart card certificates and use the key exactly as a smart card. Even via NFC, it has 2 slots for legacy protocols, for one-time password, so you can program the key to work as an one-time password generator, for instance. If you're looking to get more details, I'm not going to talk about the specifics, but we still have a stand till 5 o'clock near the Seoul entrance, so you're welcome to stop by and come over. The statistics that I showed you before are based on real-life statistics. As you know, FIDO-2 is a protocol developed by Google and Yubico in response to numerous hijacking attempts of Google accounts. I mean, those were targeted attacks. So Google compared about 350,000 hijacking attempts, and based on the authentication methods, we had different outcomes. So when somebody was using SMS as a second factor, in 50% of those instances, the hackers were able to take over their accounts. Push OTP, only 10% of those accounts were able to being taken over hardware security key. Well, there was no physical possibility to take over this account. Even Apple, beginning of last year, decided to implement phishing resistant authentication to protect iCloud accounts because they said, well, OTP is no longer good enough. This is not the gold standard. We decide to move alongside with the market and implement something that is secure and guarantees that the account cannot be taken over. So these are the typical, I would say, consumer use cases. However, hardware security keys, they are compatible with every operating platform from Windows to Android to Linux. You can use them with almost every VPN provider, either by the FIDO-2 protocol, using a certificate, using OTP. You can use it with all the identity and access management platforms, such as Azure, Entra, Duo, Ping, Thales, Microfocus, and many others. You can use it with all the password managers, privileged access platforms such as CyberArk, and many others, online services, Microsoft accounts, and so on and so on. And as my colleague mentioned before, when you use the key as a smart card, you can manage it in any CMS platform such as VersaSec, Interseed, HID, you name it. It's compatible with actually everything. Now, many people say that, yes, we tried hardware keys, we tried RSA keys, and that was a bad idea because nobody liked using them. People hated them, people lost them, and it was actually a concept that failed from the start. Yes, that's true, because when you look at the old hardware keys, RSA keys, it was one token for one use case to get access to one application. Hardware security keys, you can use one key to protect your digital world in a company as well as in a private world. The companies who deploy hardware security keys do it with the idea, okay, you get a key to log into Azure, to log into your corporate environment. Please use it to protect your personal Google account, your iCloud accounts, your banking accounts, mail accounts, etc. And by doing so, the people don't tend to not to lose the key, not to borrow the key. They don't leave it in a workstation, and they make sure they always have it ready on the keychain. So thank you very much, guys. Remember, one takeaway from this presentation is that not MFA is created equal, and that is something I would like you to take away. Thank you very much.